Mamma mia, mamma mia.
It's copyright.
Mamma mia, let me go. I'm just screaming at my mom. That's not copyright. He's just a poor boy. Okay, that might be copyright.
Yeah, that part probably.
So, how do I start these? Forget.
Just kind of start 'em.
Yo, what?
In my thoughts and in my dreams, they're always in my mind. These songs of hobbits, dwarves and men, and elves, come close your eyes. You can see them too.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Or New Year's. Whenever this comes out. I have what I would consider an entertaining story for you all. This is a tale that comes to us about a decade ago, when I first started playing D&D. When I first started running D&D. Inexperienced dungeon masters like myself will occasionally attempt to pad time. That's a fine way of putting it. Sometimes players can do things in your games which defy all reason and reality and leave you in a really impossible situation. Whatever plans you had before are so completely fucked beyond repair that there's no point in continuing them, and you gotta write something else. So you have to come up with some in-between stuff. So this story takes place during some of that in-between stuff. This story concerns somebody that I mentioned in the last episode. One person in particular. Sometimes characters can last just a few sessions if the person's gotta, move out to another state or something. Who would ever do that, though? I got a tea sampler for Christmas, so I drink tea now. This story's about them. They had the opportunity to come back after, I want to say like a few months. They were going to be in town for like a week, and they wanted to know if we were cool to have him join again for one session, like a little one-off, right? So he asks me, I think on Discord or maybe Skype. It might have been that long ago. Wow, remember Skype? So he messages me on Skype or Discord or Ventrilo or Raid Call. Remember Raid Call?
You cannot win by yourself.
Raid Call. Communication for winners.
TeamSpeak, that's it. He messages me on TeamSpeak, and he says, I'm gonna be in town for like a week. Do you care if I play just like as a one-off? And I said, yeah, that's fine. We're not really in the middle of anything, considering all this other funky shit that went down. The player playing our paladin decided to quit. What kind of character do you want to play? So he gives me this character, and it's the kind of character that would be very appropriate for a one-off. We're gonna call him Gary. He was really into G names at the time. I think before he left, he played like a thief or something whose name was like Grant Graykey or something like that. And then when that character was done, he switched to a witch hunter that he didn't play for very long named Graham Griswold. So this guy's name is Gary Gilgamesh. So Gary Gilgamesh, he's a wizard. Hold on. He's a wizard. Now, being a wizard is very important to Gary, but wizards need a lot of reagents. I'm gonna stop doing that, but you'll get where I'm going with this as the story goes on. Wizards need a lot of reagents, so he has with him like a squire or a page boy or like a hireling or something, who was originally intended just to be sort of like his inventory, like he carried around all the bags and stuff. But I think as time went on and they talked to this guy more and more, they realized that between the two of them, the guy carrying the bags was the far more competent individual, which is appropriate given the nature of this story. He shows up with this guy, Gary Gilgamesh, and nobody really knows what to expect out of him. But when I tell you that Gary Gilgamesh is about to commit maybe the single most atrocious, vile, wretched, heinously evil act I've ever seen a player commit in a game of Dungeons & Dragons. I'm not exaggerating. This is not a joke. This is not a gag. It's one of the worst things I've ever witnessed a player do. Holy shit. The players and now their new I don't know what to call him. They never really even called him an acquaintance. was just sort of a guy that they knew of. They didn't meet him on the way there. They didn't meet him until they were already in town. I believe he counted as like a late entrant or something. So for the setup of this, they get to this town and there's a tournament going on. I think they may have already been in the town, but that's not really the important part. The important part is that there's a tournament going on. And I encouraged, as sometimes you should do as a DM, like a little arts and crafts project for the fucking rugrats that are pretending to be adults that are playing in your game. I said, hey guys, if you guys want to come up with your own banners or sigils or like group names or something, you totally can. The rules of this tournament are there's like some people doing 1v1s, there's some people doing 2v2s, and I think there were people doing 4v4s or something like that. And everybody wanted to be in the 1v1 tournament because that's where all the prestige is, right? You want to be the best fighter, you want to be the best combatant, I don't know. The important thing is that they were going to be potentially fighting each other, and that was exciting. Or at least it was exciting until they met Gary. Gary and his squire, whose name is not important. We'll call him Mitch. I don't know. Gary and Barry. There you go. So Gary and Barry, they enter the town, and they meet these guys, and what they see when they meet Gary is like, I don't want to say used car salesman. More like a used tire salesman. He's like a step below a used car salesman. He's kind of, instead of being greasy, he's kind of slimy. Instead of being dirty, he's kind of dusty, you know? He's got some kind of odd quality about him that makes it so that they don't really want to talk to this guy too much. But importantly, they get to see his big bag of tricks, as he calls it. This is where he keeps his magic tricks. He is a wizard after all, and he needs a place to keep them all. So everybody rolls up to the tournament, and they all show off the things that they've made. I do not have any of these banners, except one, and it's the one that Gary had. Here it is. He put a lot of effort into this banner. Don't laugh. So he rolls up with his banner in tow, and he says, hey guys, I'm a combatant just like you all. I'm ready to fight, to prove that I'm the best wizard in the world. Okay, so Gary's tournament record only spans one fight. And in this fight, I think he demonstrated that if your players want to do something, they're going to. You can't really stop them. It's really all about mitigating the consequences of whatever actions that they want to take. Considering this is some in-between stuff, the consequences are very low. Nobody really cares what happens here. They just want to do some cool stuff and get out. So the fights begin. People are going back and forth. They're doing their character things. They're fighting. They're winning, right? They're getting glory, etc. Then comes Gary's turn. Now Gary is a very skilled wizard, so he knows time is of the essence. So he turns to his squire there, or bag boy, I don't know, Mitch. No, what did I say? Barry. And he says, quickly now, give me my bag of tricks so that I might win this contest. Barry hands over the bag of tricks, and in he goes with his large bag and his wizard staff, which is not a cane, it's a wizard staff. The guy across from him is like some low-ranking, maybe a pardoned bandit or something. It was a guy. It was like a guy that I pulled out of a book. It was a guy that I pulled out of a book. Like this book, right? Damn, I haven't looked in here in a minute. Anyway, his opponent's standing across from him, drawing his bow, waiting for the right time to strike. He's waiting for the officials to let the tournament fight begin. Gary, however, is preparing his spells, as he would call it. This includes many activities, such as pulling out a pestle and mortar and moving a big, like, brown bag around in it, and crushing something.
Magic.
Obviously, some wizard dust. Some magic powder for those magic spells. The fight starts, and very quickly, it becomes obvious what Gary is. Every time Gary wants to cast a spell, what he tells me in real life is, okay, I'm gonna cast this. And I say, okay, roll your thing. So then he rolls a concentration check. And it becomes really obvious, really quickly, that these are not spells, right? What Gary is a fraud. I don't really know what his class was. It doesn't matter. The point is, whatever class he was, he's pretending to be a wizard, right? He has maxed the shit out of sleight of hand, and he has maxed the shit out of bluff to try to convince everybody around him that what he is doing is magical, right? These include such highlights as when the guy shoots an arrow at him and miraculously misses. Gary runs up to him as fast as he can, and he casts, I think, blind or something, which I don't think blind is a spell, but it's in Gary's spell book. And what blind is his magic powder, as he was calling it, that he had crushed up in his mortar, right? He throws the magic powder into this guy's face. Now, to you and I, magic powder could mean a lot of things, but to Gary and the man it is currently in the face of, magic powder is glass dust, like crushed glass, that he has thrown into this guy's face. This guy's now blind. He's also bleeding everywhere and also screaming very loudly. I forget what the next thing that Gary casts was, but the important bit is this, right? And the name of this video. He has intentionally purchased a cursed bag of holding. Bags of holding are obviously a bag that's been enchanted to contain many items, right? It's like a little pocket dimension for you. A cursed bag of holding has a very special property to it, where when you go to grab one item, all of the contents leave the bag, right? Now normally, pretty bad. In this case, really useful, because Gary has filled his bag with folding chairs. When he goes to grab one chair, all of the chairs come out. So Gary reaches into the bag and then holds the bag open as wide as it can go, and he yells, CHAIRSTORM! As he casts his ultimate 9th level spell, CHAIRSTORM. So this guy, who is bleeding, blind from the glass in his eyes, is now buried under probably 15 feet of folding chairs. I think he had something like 550 folding chairs in his bag. So CHAIRSTORM has come out. These chairs have absolutely broken this guy's fingers. They've smashed his arms, and he's now buried under a pile of folding chairs. But this is not where Gary ends it. So Gary, in his infinite wisdom, decides this fight has to end now. If CHAIRSTORM doesn't beat him, then I've got to make sure that this guy stays down for the count. So he casts Grease. And by cast Grease, I mean he throws an enormous flask of oil, like tar, all over this pile of folding chairs. And then he casts Fireball, which is effectively just like a Roman candle that he lights and shoots at this pile of oil-covered wooden folding chairs, which immediately ignites, and there is now a man underneath this burning mass of wood and tar. He's bleeding from his face. He's blind because the glass is in his eyes. And everybody, including me, everyone at this table is looking at him and going, what the fuck? What the fuck is this? What are you doing? Which, in game, Gary responds to the booing crowd, hoping that this poor soul is still alive. He responds to them by yelling into the crowd and saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought this was a tournament. I thought this was a fight." But this is not the worst. Fuck. This is not the worst part. The worst part is that I'm rolling dice. I'm not just letting this happen. The whole time I've been rolling dice, trying to get this poor, blinded, burning man out of this horrific situation. So this guy has managed to extricate himself from this mass of horror. Understandably, he is panicking. So when he's trying to get out of the oil, he does manage to pull himself out of the chairs, but in doing so, he has covered himself in some of the tar. There is also burning tar and pitch still on the ground. This is the worst bit. Gary sees this guy has extricated himself from this inferno that he created. So what does he do? Well, when Gary sees, he runs over as fast as he can, and then he asks if he can try to sweep this man's legs from under him. And with a critical success on his combat maneuver, he trips the guy back into the oil and then stands in front of him doing the Randy Orton taunt as the crowd screams. They're asking for somebody to please intervene in this horrific scene unfolding before them. And anytime the officials try to come in, he holds a bottle of pitch and says, "This fight is to the death." And anytime this nameless guy somehow manages to get out, Gary just pushes him back in. It's the worst fucking thing. It's the worst thing anybody's done at my table. Needless to say, even if Gary wins this fight, which I think he did, I think he won by virtue of that guy being dead. A big pile of burning tar and wood. Nobody was gonna let Gary continue. Nobody wanted to see that again. Nobody wanted to let that happen again. So what they did instead is they threw him in prison. I believe through foresight, the player in question knew that something like this might happen. So he had with him a smuggler's kit, which included a way to hide lockpicks, which he was also very good at. So they threw him in prison, and he instantly escaped prison and then skipped town. And I remember his last words at this table was he turns to his squire, Barry, and he says, "Well, come on, Barry, off to the next adventure." Okay, last story didn't have a moral, so I'm going to try to make this story have a moral. Don't do that. That's the moral of the story. Don't be fucking Gary. Yeah, it's not bad.